Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I'm Brigid Burke and today is the 20th of September. Can you believe it's the 20th of September? Sound like those people on, I don't know, Jimmy Kimmel or one of those where, actually usually that's at the first of the month. Can you believe it's the first of whatever. Good morning, Alex. Yeah, it's, I was just saying it's the 20th of September and it just, autumn starts this weekend, actually, on this Sunday. So, good morning, Pat. So we've got, we're almost, this is pretty much, what's weird is this is kind of the end of summer, but it's so fall-like out. It's been, I guess we've had a little bit of warmth and humidity, but, it is a little bit, I don't know, it just seems strange. I feel like we've either already kind of been in autumn, but I don't know, it still seems just kind of weird that it's late September. So good morning, Sam. And yeah, so we are, I've kind of rushing through this morning. Last night was a barrage of messages. I had an aunt that ended up in the hospital. I think she's okay. Well, actually, no, I don't think they took her to the hospital. I think I took her to urgent care because the hospitals, you're better off not going to the emergency room with certain things. I think she had a fall. And then I got another call from my sister very late last night. And good morning, Suda. So, so like a lot of the disruptive influences of the eclipse and so forth, are showing themselves in certain places. We'll just kind of leave it. Oh gosh, so sorry. Ugh, yeah. Well, it's just, I just feel like the family fun is probably just beginning right now. So there's just been a lot of stuff going on, but, most of it's not anything that I can do anything about, or even that necessarily involves me in a direct way. But my sister, I tend to be the person she calls when she needs to talk about stuff. So it was. So I woke up this morning to a long message that she left at like midnight last night. I was like, ooh. So she's been. She's definitely been having one thing after another. I think we were talking about the whole idea of Saraswati, of the idea of the 7.5-year Saturn phase. And my sister's just turned 61, so I feel like she's about to enter probably the last Saraswati of her lifetime. Which, frankly, she doesn't really need, because she's already, I feel like her whole, she's had, it's kind of been one thing after another with her. But in any case, so yeah, I woke up, and actually I still have a bunch of other messages too this morning that came up from different people. So, oh boy, I see. Yeah, it's so we'll, I don't know. We'll see where everything ends up. But so I guess the point being is it's kind of left me a little discombobulated this morning. So I did manage to connect with my guides this morning and just say, okay, what do we, what's the theme of the day? What do we want to talk about here? And play seems to be the theme of the day. Playing around. Oh no, yeah. Well, it's like I said, I feel like I've gotten a lot of flack for being somebody who just has kind of, sometimes I feel very overburdened by the fact that, okay, I've bought my own house, I do everything myself, I have to take care of everything myself, I have to, do all the yard work, do the painting, do the power washing, all that's me, in addition to trying to run a business from my house, trying to maintain all my other stuff. And there's days when I always say like, I should, I want to have support, but then there's days when I kind of feel like, and of course, the kind of like that I want to, that I just, okay, I guess the bottom line is, I feel like there's days sometimes I feel like I've made a good decision by just deciding to do it all by myself. So interesting. Sam and I were talking about this playing around with things this morning. Yeah. Yes. And that was and that's what's interesting. That was the theme of the day. I can show you the first cards that I had gotten. We started with the existence card, okay, which is the Magician, but it's the idea of when the world feels like the world's out to get you, just go out and look at the stars. Kind of putting things in perspective. The inner feeling was trust, okay. Trusting that things are going to go the way. The external feeling is. It's the maturity card, but it's also the Ace of Pentacles. So this is about new beginnings. I feel like there's been a lot of confirmation lately that we are definitely moving into a new place. And as we've often said, moving into those new places, sometimes, I mean, there's two ways to look at it. We can look at it as something scary, or we can look at it as an opportunity. And a lot of times it's hard to look at it as an opportunity because we have a certain context, maybe a certain context even for pleasure, for what we think is pleasurable, but we don't. We have this certain context for pleasure. Get my brain together here today. But when we go into a new place, the things we're in the habit of doing may not be the things that we do or that we even can do. Maybe we're in some way there's a limitation from doing the thing that we want to do. Like, let's just say, I don't know, this is just a stupid example, but if somebody likes to go to the movies regularly, and let's just say there's not the money right now, or there's nothing in the movie theaters that appeals, okay? Let's just say that that's your way of relaxing and chilling out, or there's, everything on TV sucks, and, which is pretty much the normal case, I think. I mean, I'm sure there's some exceptions, I'm sure. But, then it's kind of, or things that we used to do that we enjoyed suddenly don't feel like we enjoy them anymore. And then it's like, well, now what? And sometimes this is a sign that it's time to expand beyond our horizons, to do something new. I mean, yeah, that's why we have the Playfulness card, right? This was the advice card. And then the outcome was We Are the World, okay, which is the 10 of Pentacles. We have the Ace and the 10 of Pentacles in here. And so again, this is about being part of a community. But it's also about sharing our gifts with others. And it does make me think a lot about the school, because I have just started, and Pat has joined our school, so this is I'm very excited. She's gonna be part of the ISFM, so that's really, really cool. And I just wanted to remind people. I know Joanne was somebody who had indicated an interest, but I think she posted somewhere that her stomach's not feeling well this week, so maybe that's why we haven't seen her. Yay. So I don't know if she's going to, but it's just reminding people that classes, I was realizing yesterday, I said classes start, actually in less than 2 weeks. So if people wanted to register for that, I'm still trying to leave the 2 payment option open for people too. If they say like, oh, well, I'd love to, but that's too much money up front or whatever. So, if anybody who's interested, then, you might want to, I'm going to, today I actually have a whole bunch of stuff. I want to put a live stream together, hopefully for earlier next week, maybe next Monday or something like that, with some friends. With the faculty, just to see if they're available. They may or may not be. It all depends. I know people's teaching days are different. My teaching days. Well, I did all my grading for this week, so that, which was good, in spite of the fact that I haven't gotten paid yet for one class, but it'll happen. And so I'm just, I'm excited, because I was kind of afraid at this point that it was like, okay, a lot of people are looking at it. And I think a lot of people have questions about the school too, because I think some people feel like, oh, well, I have to be an academic to take these courses. And I'm like, well, no, the whole point is that you don't have to be an academic to take these courses. I mean, yeah, they are being taught by people with credentials, but there are people who know how to teach. So, and some people are trying to separate. I had on the Katonia stream, I had people who were trying to separate the academic part from the, oh, well, we can talk about these figures academically, but that's not the same as talking about them experientially. And I'm like, well, actually, it's both. I mean, yeah, the person isn't coming in of like, okay, if Joanna's talking about Baba Yaga, she's not talking about Baba Yaga she's not saying like, oh, I'm a witch who invokes Baba Yaga. Like, she's not coming at it from that perspective, but she is still from Poland, and there's they go hand in hand. Yes, exactly. And it's interesting how many people try to separate it out, or they listen to Katonia podcast and they'll say, oh yeah, but you're talking about Hecate, but you're talking about her from an academic standpoint. And I'm like, well, I'm talking about her from an experiential one too. But the background of her is complicated and needs to be understood in that context. And people will say, oh, but I worship her, and this is a different kind. I'm like, the experiences people have of her. Morrigan is always the best example that I use for myself, because I've written a whole book on Morrigan that I'm still waiting to see what's going to happen with that. Because the book's been bought and paid for by the publisher, and they doesn't seem like right now it seems like they're clearing their old stock out again. And I don't know. I have to reach out to them and find out what's going on. I've said this like 20 times, haven't I? But it's on my very long list of things to do. But Morrigan has always been my prime example of that because, okay, there is a body of literature about the Morrigan from usually medieval Irish literature. Okay, there are, as I point out in my book, there are local stories. I think, how do you say it? The Denshenkas, I think how you say it. They're basically the stories about the land and the naming of the land and things like that. And then if you go to Ireland, you talk to the locals and they will have another point of view on the situation. And then the reality is that whatever worship of the Morrigan looked like, in whatever form or however the ancient Irish peoples, whoever settled there, felt about her, is largely going to be unknown. You're only going to know it through inference and folktale and local story, maybe. And even then, you're not necessarily going to get the whole picture. I mean, there's the archaeology, there's a whole record of things that you can look at. And then there's me with the dreams that I have and the experiences I had of Morrigan, right? And how she appears to me. And a lot of people will say to me, oh, she appears to me as a redhead. And I'm like, well, she appears to me with black hair. That's how she's always appeared. Black hair and violet colored eyes. That's how she always appears to me. And other people will say, well, no. I mean, you know what I mean? And it's just, so, okay. So there's my experience of her, which has some overlap with what we read in the medieval literature and so forth. But then there's also, but then there's also my experience. So if I were to teach a class on Morrigan, for example, which I'm not this semester, probably in a subsequent semester I will. If I was to teach a class on Morrigan, then I would, and it's just like the book that I wrote. It's like, okay, we're going to bring in all the academic and theoretical background here. We're going to say, okay, these are all the sources, these are the narratives, and this is the picture that it paints of her from these narratives, and this is how we might interpret that. And then the second part is, okay, this is my experience of being involved with her, not as a priestess of her, because that, to me, I don't know, I'm not that fond of that. I mean, to me, if you are somebody who sets up a devotional altar, or you have like a temple, and your literal role is to maintain that temple every day, whatever it is, whether it's an outdoor one, whether it's an indoor one, if that's your role, then okay, then maybe you call yourself priestess. But there's a lot of people who use the term priestess, and I'm not sure I would use it that way. Let's put it that way. I've often referred to myself as kind of the more old school. I see myself as a vehicle. It may be more akin to, and I don't want to compare it to voodoo, because voodoo is kind of a whole different thing. But in voodoo, you have the idea of the loas and the different kinds of spirits that can possess the person. Okay, so to me, it's almost a kind of possession. It's like you're a vehicle. Like I think they use the French word cheval. You're like a horse. You're actually like being ridden. And that's the way that I see my role with a lot of these spirits, is like they're riders. They come in right here, and they ride, and whatever they're looking to tell me, or whatever they're looking to do, or whatever they are trying to accomplish. It's sort of like you become the kind of human conduit that they move around, and that's the way I see it. At least for me. That doesn't mean that's everybody's experience of it, but. Okay, but so if you're doing a class like we have in this school, it's like, okay, we are going to talk about the academics, but people can also talk about their experiences as well. And because, it's like Alex just said, they go hand in hand. There's we try to separate things out. And if I'm not a practitioner of a particular, if a particular deity or spirit or whatever is not part of the practice, then obviously if I do a podcast on them or something, I'm only talking about them from what I can interpret, where I see them fitting into the archetypal picture, or at least the way it seems. People who are actual practitioners will say to me, oh, well, no, there's more to it with practice. Okay, well, there's more to it with practice. I don't have that experience, and I'm not going to start talking about practice when I don't have experience with practice of that. I just don't think that's just dishonest. I can't, I'm not going to stand there and tell you about what practice of worshiping Pambagira is like or something. I'm not going to get into things that I'm not going to go into territory that I don't know. I can only talk about it from a theoretical standpoint. Humans being human, right? Yeah, exactly. And so this school, and that's why I call this, even though we're bringing in social sciences like anthropology, I call this a school of humanities because this is actually a school about being human, about about looking at our human stories and seeing how they fit in with our experiences. That's part of the creative process. So if we get back to the idea of play, the way in which we use our imagination, and in the way in which the things that are... Okay, if we think about crises and things in our lives, if you take the point of view that you see in the East, that life is a game to be played, rather than this deadly serious thing that we all seem to feel is, we're afraid of making a false move, or a landmine's going to blow up in our face, right? When we're playing this game and when we're met with certain challenges, I think that's one of the things about role-playing games. Like I think I've mentioned, I haven't the last 2 weeks just because of things that have been going on, but I generally play D&D Tuesday afternoons with a bunch of friends from England. And it's really, role-playing games, it's like you get into certain situations and, your characters have certain personality traits, and it's like, how do you play that? If somebody is an actor, there's a certain kind of role that they'll play. They know that I have to act. There's certain traits, and they say, oh, okay, this is how I'm going to play those traits. And a lot of times, there's a lot in life that's about how well you play a certain role. I remember when I was in 9th grade English class. I don't know why I remember this. We had this guy. What was his name? We had this English teacher who was, I forget what his last name, he was, I think eventually he got fired. I think the headmaster hated his guts because I went to Catholic school. I think I can see his name so clearly, and his really awful, really long, Civil War type mustache. But I remember one of the things he talked about in our class was he said, and of course he put it a different way. He's like, half of life is learning the art of bullshining, It's the art of bullshit. It's just like how well do you play certain things. Now, obviously, when you're being authentic, okay, when we're being authentic to who we are, I know I'm one of those people who is not always. I used to really act and play at a lot of things. That's a childhood thing I need to recover. But I just find when it comes to me and who I am, it's hard for me to be somebody that I'm not. So I don't know that we're necessarily saying acting in the sense of being somebody, not being true to yourself, but more in the idea of we can expand by trying out and taking on different roles, and seeing. Because a lot of times our ego consciousness, what we identify with, is just, it's not part of what you might think of as your soul identity. It's not, it could be an expression of that, but it could also just be whatever the social public faces that you have. What you do, right? Not guile, right? It's not like you're doing things to deliberately deceive people. Although, as we've mentioned in our little Ajax Odysseus talk, there is that sometimes that guile, we not to take ourselves too seriously. That sometimes that guile is something we use as a strategy when we're in trouble. Seriously, yes, right. Well, that's it. And to recognize, like I said, back to our friend Alan Watts, he talks about this a lot. He says, life is, you want to treat it as a game. And it's a game that you're playing as you go along. So if you think about any kind of game that you play, where, or one of those games where, people ask you questions, or you're put in certain scenarios, or if you're playing charades, or you're playing, whatever you're playing, it's just kind of like, oh, okay, this is the thing. Now, what are you going to do with it? So if you kind of look at it as you're in a particular situation, and it's like, oh, okay, I'm in a situation. This is how much money I have or don't have. This is how much. These are the characters I'm dealing with. This is who I think is going to, this is who I think is going to support me. These are the people I'm not sure about. It's kind of like you're walking into a scenario, and it's like, okay, how am I going to play this? And again, it's not in the sense of trying to be manipulative. But when we have difficult situations, sometimes creative solutions are called for. And sometimes outright creativity is what's called for. That's why I always kind of push people, maybe push is the wrong word, but I always encourage people to focus on creativity. And that's the thing too. A lot of us are kind of feel that, there's a lot of people who feel like, oh, well, I'm not creative. Like for me, I'm a writer, okay? But some people may say, oh, well, I don't know how to write. I have friends who are really great artists. And it gets back to that idea of comparison too. If I looked at my friend JR's work and tried to compare anything that I do to his, I'm like, there's no comparison. He's trained, natural, talented artist. He knows how to his drawings. I've showed people my picture of my image of the Morrigan. Speaking of, he drew that. He has actually drawn an Azrael that's on my wall too. They're beautiful. They're absolutely. There's no way. I seriously doubt in this lifetime, without really extensive training, that I could ever do anything even close to that. But that's okay. I mean, I still make art. I still do watercolors and stuff. I mean, yeah, they're not. No one's going to be hanging them in a museum. But you can still do something. You can still express in that way. I'm not a poet by any means, but I still write poetry. Well, exactly. Yeah, you're able to work with image, because what it does is it's almost like. It's like, okay, I talk about that live stream that I watch with this guy, and he's a musician. And one of the things he often talks about with playing guitar, which is something else I've attempted years and years ago and was never really very good at, because I have too much of an academic brain approaching it. And he said, well, it's not really, like, he says, I don't read music either. He said to people, I don't read music. I just know, muscle memory. Your poetry is great. Yeah, that's yeah, I'm sure it is great. Yeah, I haven't seen Alex's poetry, but I'm sure it's awesome. And it's, what was I saying about this guy? He was saying, that there's, when he plays, he says, it's just like, he said, a lot of it, he said, the first thing you do is build up muscle memory. You get a feel for the fretboard, and you know where the notes are. And then you hear notes and you kind of respond to notes, when you play. It's like you just know, or you know what certain scales are. And that's kind of the foundation that you have. And then you're able to take off from there. That was not exactly the way that I learned how to play. And not to diss my guitar teacher, because I'm sure I gave him agita, because I was 13 and an easily distracted person. But he was... But yeah, I mean, it's just when you're doing something creative, there's often a little bit of a foundation or a structure like that you play around with and get used to. And a lot of times, because one of the things that he had said recently on one of his live streams is, he said, well, getting away from people saying, oh, you should have learned more music theory and stuff. And he's like, well, okay, at some point, I mean, yes, oh, what scale is this, and what is this, and what, there's a lot of technical terms around it, musical terms, is it in this, and isn't it in this key, and does it use this mode, and does it use that? And he's like, who cares? There's not a right way to do it. You just play. You just play. And there are great technical players, but some of the greatest guitarists that we have seen are people, who are not really awesome technical players, but they're still very impressive in how they play. I mean, again, from a very strict academic music kind of standpoint. And yeah, and to the point of poetry, I mean, poetry is something that, if you want to ask an academic about poetry, I mean, I have, and I know I've mentioned this on the live streams before, but I remember talking to Peggy Samuels, who was my teacher. She's written some books on Elizabeth Bishop, and actually Elizabeth Bishop's diorama work, I think, is what she has a specific book on, because she had done dioramas and collages and things like that. So she talks a little bit more about Elizabeth Bishop's artwork, but she was a scholar of her, and I love Elizabeth Bishop. She is one of my favorite poets, like, ever. And but when she would talk about certain things, she had a very academic, new criticism kind of approach to the way things are, and also the way you're supposed to approach talking about poetry. I'll send you my page for my writing today. Oh yeah, please. I would love to see it. That would be awesome. 'Cause yeah, and I remember saying to Peggy at one point, I said, all right, Peggy, well then tell me, when we start talking about it, if I look at it this way, and she goes, no, I don't see a basis. You need to really look at it this way. And I'm like, okay, but when I'm looking at poetry, what am I supposed to be looking at? What it's that old question of what makes a good poem. How do you know a poem is good? I mean, if it's something you've written and you like, Somebody who is a poetry scholar might look and say, well, it technically has to have this and this and this. I mean, when people take poetry classes, they learn things about, meter and rhyme and structure and pentameter. And of course, rhyme isn't even necessarily a thing anymore. When you make poetry that overly rhymes, unless you're writing villanelles and stuff, if you use too much rhyming, then people will say, oh, well, it sounds too much like a limerick or something, or like a joke. It doesn't sound like serious poetry to people, right? But, or people will say that, or poetry is now more free form, because I think something that the moderns taught us is it's more about image. It's more about creating an image with words. Like Ezra Pound's In a Station at the Metro, or how does he say? These faces that appear in the crowd, petals on a wet black bough. I mean, that's the whole poem. It's just an image that you're creating of these people being, it's a comparison that's being made. But if you have a black bough and you see these petals, and that's the way these faces kind of melt into this station. And so it's creating an image. It's telling you something about what's going on without saying, well, there's these people and they're walking this way and they're doing this and they're doing that and this one's going there and then there's a lot of them and it's this and that. It's not trying to describe it to you. It's describing it to you in an image. Okay. And poetry has become a bit more like that since we've had the kind of moderns who have, and the contemporary poets who have been doing that kind of stuff. Your E.E. Cummings, or your people like that who have written these pieces that are very, they're very experimental, but they work. Or William Carlos Williams. Every time I look at my neighbor's yard, he has this red wheelbarrow in the back. And I just keep thinking of William Carlos Williams. So much depends, upon a red wheelbarrow, beneath something besides the white chickens. I forget what the rest of it is. Creativity in general is great because you can say things without saying them directly. So vital and fun. Yeah, and to that point, when you're saying something, when you're expressing yourself creatively, whatever it is a form of play. And when you think about it, when you watch kids playing, okay, if they're playing at, I don't know, they're playing at some adult thing, you'll still see children playing house, for example. They'll have like the little kitchen set and they're playing house, or they'll play with their dolls, or they'll play different. Are you going to walk over and go, no, you're doing it the wrong way. You're supposed to play this way. I mean, nobody does that, right? When you're playing, you're playing. That's what you're doing. You're not being like, we have structures for certain things that we have. But oftentimes play too is about either learning about the structure or playing with the structure too. It's just like, oh, okay, there's this thing. How do we dismantle it, or how do we creatively use it? If you have a tool that's used for a particular purpose, but then somebody decides to use it for something entirely different, that's a creative use of something, right? You're not just doing the thing that's intended. And I think it comes down to a lot of times we don't allow ourselves to play, or we think we're not capable of play. Or we think we're too afraid because we think people are going to judge us for our play. I'm gonna play around with this. And again, I think that's for a lot of people who have been asking me questions about the school. They're like, oh yeah, but I don't know how to write. I don't know how to write papers. I don't know how to. I'm like, it's not a matter of that. As you go through the course, you can decide how you think you want to express this. And I talked yesterday about having a kind of a workshop where people can use whatever media they want. If somebody's a painter and you give a prompt and they want to draw something, and somebody else wants to write a poem, and somebody else wants to do a fiction piece, and somebody else thinks they're going to write a mini essay, all of those things are expressions. They're all good. We all have different things that we bring to the table. And I think we're seeing a lot of this expansive energy. Remember, we were talking about a lot about the eclipse energies around the 9th house. This is about expanding your horizons. And it's not just about like going back to university or something. I mean, it could be for some people, but it's not necessarily, that's not the necessary understanding of higher ed in that house. It can just be, again, it's expanding. It's learning more about the world you're in, or experiencing or exploring more. That's why it has to do with long distance travel and things. There's the idea that you are stepping outside your comfort zone. We've been hearing that a lot too. And trying something you haven't tried because maybe you think, oh, wow, I'm not good at that. Well, you don't, well, how do you know? I mean, yeah, okay. and it's that Five of Swords energy. We want to compare ourselves all the time. We want to say, oh, well, we look at somebody else and go, oh, look, they're really good at that. I'm never going to be like them. You know, I'm glad you're talking about this with the school. Sorry to derail you here, but I think a part of me was like, oh God, I have to make a piece of work at the end. Yeah, and I'm wondering if that's what scares a lot of people off, because can you apply or enroll at any time? Is it rolling? I can't register now, but I really want to when I can. The way that it's structured is we have the 4 weeks with the semester. If you want to do that, let me know. I haven't done it as rolling, mainly because what I do have is I have what they call the audit option. So people can, if people want to jump in a little bit later, what we can do, I don't know. I'm thinking about this now because I'm wondering, because I know Pat asked me last night too if they were going to be recorded, which wasn't exactly my intention, but if somebody did jump in late, it would probably be worth it to have a recording that if somebody paid late that they could go back and watch the recordings and, you know, have some kind of, although the thing is you missed the discussion on it in that way as well. So I don't know. Right now I've kind of had audit options where people could audit in 2-week blocks. If they say, okay, I just want to focus on what Dr. Kate is doing, or I just want to focus on what Dr. Joanna's doing, or they want to focus on what I'm doing, they can just choose to do that. But I'm thinking in addition, I might also offer that workshop. So, yeah, and I know also you've got the time difference thing too. I'm just trying to think how that might work, because I would love to be able to expand, you know, and really the point of the creative project, by the way, just to kind of go back to that for a minute, is because it's not so much about like, okay, you're going to make something you're going to be judged on. The idea is, and with the faculty who look at it, they're not there to judge whether or not, yes, I think it scares me a bit, but I jumped and and don't regret. Yeah, and again, it's not anything to be afraid of, because nobody's there to sit there and say, you know, it's not like grading a paper. Now, if somebody's producing something that they're saying, okay, I'm writing an academic paper and I want to publish this, then probably the person evaluating it is going to say, okay, well, here's the things you need to consider if you're trying to put this out as an academic paper. So, for example, if there's issues with form, they might focus on saying, oh, okay, well, you want to make sure if you're writing in APA or MLA or whatever you're writing in, like that you do it that way. Otherwise, that's not really the point. Unless that's where the person wants to get to. There's going to be a form, and each person's going to be able to talk with whoever they're mentoring about how they want to go through the project. And you know, if someone's just saying, look, I'm just experimenting with this, the person doing it's not going to be like, you know, cracking the whip at you, going like, well, you need to do this way and this way. Like that isn't the point of mentoring. The point of mentoring is to encourage you in what it is that you want to do, and show you places. Like if you're doing something for the first time and you think, you know, I probably suck at this. You know, we all start that. I'm probably not doing this right. We all kind of like have the little defense of like, oh, I'm probably doing this badly. But the point is, and that's why I have these specific teachers, is for them to look at it and say, okay, but, you know, it doesn't matter that you're not, you never do anything out of the gate. We don't, you know, you don't pick up a guitar and you're suddenly Joe Satriani. You know, you're not gonna do things immediately the right way. Validation, right? And trying to show people, like the best poetry teacher I had was Dr. Carnival. He was very good, and he, fear of messing up or feeling, oh, I'm not doing it right. I liked it because I don't consider myself to be a superstar poet. I'm very wordy. I'm very verbose, as nobody could tell from anything that I do. But so poetry is sometimes I really have to put myself in another zone to do it, which is not a bad thing. I think it's a good thing to do. But you know, but he would look at my poetry and he would say, "Oh wow, there's this thing you did right there, like that. That's the kind that like really shines. That really stands out. Like picking all the places." You know, maybe there's other places where, oh, okay, maybe it would be, and he would just say like, oh, okay, well, you know what, you could probably make this stronger if you did this. Like, it's not like saying, you know, oh, I hate this sucks, this doesn't have this meter, it wasn't anything like that. I've known poetry professors who are like that, and I think people live in fear of these people who are going to tell you that, you know, you've effed it up, and it's like, no, that isn't the point. The point is to say, you know, okay, if this is totally new to you, this here looks really good, and this is the thing that this is the kind of thing that will help you develop this. It's not there to, it's there to be encouraging. It's not there to be, because my whole point is to encourage people's creativity. And it's also because this is not the kind of thing, it's not like we're middle states accredited where you can get college credit for this and stuff. I want people to walk away not only with a certificate saying, yes, I completed this. Because people want something at the end. It's not like, hey, I want to pay you a bunch of money and not get anything out of it at the end. So the reason I have the project is because to say, okay, let you play it. It's really, maybe I should call it like play instead. It's like you want to play around with something so that you can, and have somebody tell you like, okay, if you're looking to work in this media, this is the thing I would encourage you in. And if there's certain things that you feel like you wanted to do better, they could say, okay, well, they make suggestions, but not just be like, yeah, that's bad, that's wrong, this is bad, that's wrong. The idea is that's not what good teachers do. Good teachers don't stand there and criticize you in that way, because it's not helpful to anybody. You don't get any sense that as if you create something and somebody rips it apart. I can't believe we just circled the theme of today's live stream. Isn't that great? Yes. Yes, thank you. Yeah, I have a few things I could say about that from more recent news stories and stuff, but I won't. Which is interesting because the feminine is to be, you can't be wrong when being, right? When you're being, it just is. It just is. It's, we create this, we decide what the structures and the standards are. And it all depends on what you're trying to do. But to me, my problem is that it's fun. It's like attending art school. Yeah, it's the whole point is to try to open up and think about things differently. I mean, yes, we know that there are certain forms and structures and that are formal and that are academic, but the whole point is how do we break out of those? This is literally the tagline is new thought for the 21st century. How do we think differently? And it doesn't mean you have to come up with any great world-changing thing overnight, because that's not how things change. It has to change with people individually starting to think about things in a new way. And that's the point of the school, really. It's like, okay, let's start small, start with these themes that we're interested in, and how do we start to think about differently? And how do we play with those things? That's why we have the project, so that you can play with these things. Okay, so it's not a case of you're gonna be brought in and this is like your test and you have to see and that's something that I've been wanting to talk about with people, because I'm like, yeah, that isn't really what we're trying to do here. We want to show where people's strengths are, and one of the reasons I love this particular group of faculty is because that's my experience of them. They're very learned in what they're doing, so they can tell you something. They can teach you something about what we're doing. But they can also, kind of encourage you in the ways that you need to be encouraged. A lot of times it gets people out of the focus on structures and things like that. Okay, so our reading for today, we have the moon card first, past lives. And again, past lives, remember, I mean, yeah, sometimes this can be about past lives, but it's often just about all of the things that, the moon has to do a lot with what's in shadow. It has to do with what we are, all of the ideas about ourselves, and who we are that we have accrued, I guess is the right word, over time. And the way in which we need to undo those things. A lot of us are trying to not allow the past to define the present. You know what I mean? Or even our future. And yeah, it's the inner voice that's kind of calling. Here's your priestess card, right? There's the inner voice that we are. That is the guide here. Okay, being guided, because I think there's a certain amount of being guided by what's unseen. Remember, with in the first reading I did, we got the trust card. It's like there's something inside that wants to be expressed here. And sometimes that's the way in which you want to express your inner voice. It can come across as a straight up speech or writing or whatever. But as we were talking about, it's not usually plain spoken. When we When we come to epiphanies or awarenesses of things, it's more of a feeling or more of an aha moment or kind of a random thought or image, not so much like somebody sitting down going, well, let me tell you, let me clarify the truth of how this is for you. That's not how our spirit guides tend to work. It's not how, that's not how our internal voice, that's not the language of the space, of that feminine space. That's not the language of it, okay? And the external feeling of which we're aware is courage, right? And this is perfect. How do you, in this landscape that seems barren, how does something grow? How does something come out of that, right? And courage is also probably some of what we're talking about here too. It's just kind of like courage to say, yes, I do have something to contribute. Yes, I do have something to say, or I can play. It's not necessarily about having to do something with the weight of the world on it. Some of this, I think, is just spirit trying to tell us how to go back to playing again, because we don't. We kind of lock ourselves in these roles. My favorite card, this is. I think this is a really good depiction of the strength card. I think I almost prefer it to the woman with the lion, because there's kind of a, I don't know. There's some. I mean, I understand the image of that too, but there's some kind of an implication there. So there's a flowering that's going on, and this goes back to this. This is the Queen of Pentacles. This is about flowering. How do you, we've got this. How do you flower, right? Flowering and flower, how do you flower? And the ultimate outcome card is the integration card again, is Temperance. So I think it comes back to the idea that this is the way we can integrate what's in our past. And I think I was talking about this the other day, not necessarily on the live stream, but the idea that when we have a past, especially if we've had a very difficult past, it's almost like you're in a certain kind of a movie. I almost feel like it's like you're in an action movie, or you're in a high drama or a film noir or whatever. You're in this kind of drama, and then the question is, okay, if that's the kind of, if you're tired of this movie, like, how do you get into a different movie? Like, how do you move into a different space, or how do you look at it that way? Because a lot of people, I mean, when you really talk to people, everybody has stuff. You have things, and you listen and you kind of go, oh my God, really? Like, we all have things. And speaking of creativity, some of the really great poets and so forth, what was it? Okay, Sylvia Plath immediately comes to mind, but, Anne Sexton, some of these poets who are these women who were just filled with angst and it was said that Sylvia Plath was probably bipolar, trying to deal with these challenges. She was a very, very smart woman who went to Cambridge and everything. She met, Ted Hughes, who was like a superstar. It's like she had all these great things. But then it was like if you read her biography, it was like, okay, well, no, you're supposed to be the little wife at home, and you're not being recognized on the same level as your husband as a poet. And and all of the angst that she went through, the angst of losing her father, the angst of, all of this was fodder for poetry. I remember A. Alvarez talking about her poetry and saying, what she did when she had split up with Ted Hughes and she was trying to take care of these two kids in London on her own, she was getting up at 5 a.m. and she was just writing stuff. And it was about normal stuff. It was about chopping vegetables at the kitchen, or it wasn't necessarily, but it was also the way in which she was integrating her normal life with the expression of how she was feeling. And that's what it does. It's kind of it's allowing us to have a place without having to sit down in like a therapy session and having to directly talk about everything all the time. It's another way to take that and to make something with it, And I think that's what we all do. Our experiences are worth something, Everything that we go through. Alchemy is literally about taking shit and turning it into gold, right? I mean, we do that with the Rahani, with the violet flame on the nose, the transmutation process, like where you're transmuting stuff, but part of that transmuting process can be play, whatever that is. I mean, we can talk about art, but sometimes art sounds too highfalutin to people. It's just play. You're playing around with stuff. When your kids learn to draw, they just sit there and they do this, right? They make a thing, they draw a stick figure and say, that's you, and you say, oh, it looks just like me. I mean, we all start somewhere. And, and we just decide what media draws us. If it's something that you wanted to do, then, if it's something, well, I mean, if you have the materials to do it, I mean, Like, for example, if somebody's going to make art, then you have to have something to either draw with or paint with or, something like that. But if you have the materials, that's just it. So maybe this is the answer my subconscious constantly dragging in. Maybe it's just play. Yeah, it may just be play. And I think one of the focuses of the new paradigm, at least if I'm going to go by Azrael's messages and so forth, is that the whole point is like it's like they're looking at us and saying, you guys take this all so seriously, like just play. Like just play. Like we should be in a world where it's not like, everything I do has to be super important. It's like, no. Why there's been a lot towards important to who? I mean, or to what? It's the whole point is, do you enjoy it? So a musician doesn't make a piece of music to say, well, I've got to write it with exactly these notes, and it's got to hurry up, and it's got to get to the end really fast, and it's got to do this, and you don't. That's not how you do that. You just play with it, and you go along with the journey. When people dance, the whole point of the dance is not to get to the end of the dance. What if others can't play? Well, frequently they don't, and then people kind of look at you like, what? But but like I said, this is a new idea, so. It's kind of, so again, it starts with individual people. There's always going to be people around you who don't get what you're doing. And think about that. Even now, if you are doing all the things that you're supposed to do to be socially acceptable or whatever, there's still going to be somebody who doesn't approve and doesn't like what you do, right? We've all got those people in our lives. They could be family, they could be people in certain communities that we're part of, who look at you and say, instead of making a career of it like before. Yeah, it's not, playing with something doesn't necessarily mean you have to dedicate your life to it. Because you're playing with it. And if you decide you play with something and go, okay, I played with that, now I don't want to play with that anymore. It's fine, then you play with something else. That's that ninth house energy, that's expansive energy. And a lot of times we don't want to go there because we have kind of either shamed ourselves or other people have shamed us into thinking, oh no, you can't do that. That's not for you. I remember when I was younger, I wanted to dance. I really wanted to learn to dance. I really wanted to learn ballet. And I did take dance for a while. But I was not like a super skinny child. Because, with ballerinas, you see, they're like 80 pounds. They're really tiny. I was not a fat person, but I did not have a tiny frame. And I literally remembered my dance teacher saying, yeah, you're too fat. You can never do ballet. So don't even waste your time. That's the kind of stuff, that's a bad teacher. That's a bad teacher. Because to me, the whole point of it is not that I'm going to become, a professional ballerina at the Met. The point is, I just want to do it, Oh, yeah. But I think it's that kind of conditioning that, Jesus Christ, yeah. That's the kind of conditioning that we need to let go of. That's the kind of conditioning, because there's always going to be people, it's kind of to Suda's point, other people who don't know how to play and who take themselves seriously and maybe are being too competitive with other people. Think about how important sport is in our society. What is sport? It's a game. Fundamentally, there's people who who take really seriously the results of these games. And really, in the grand scheme of things, it's not any more important. I have the same experience. Wanted to be a ballerina, was told I'm not graceful, so I did other performing. Oh, don't you love it? Yeah, you're not this, you're not that. Yeah, exactly. People try to put these guardrails on things or put these fences around it. That gets back to our card. I know we're over time here, but we get this. We're given this impression. Let me find it here. I will find it. Let's see. Here it is. Sorry. Took me a minute. This guy. You're not allowed in. You can't be part of this club. You're not good enough to be part of this club. Europeans play sport. They don't necessarily work out. Yeah. It's, right, exactly. So glad we talked about it. Yeah, because that's just it. You're experimenting, and the idea is to encourage people in experimentation. There's just certain things, why not try them? Just because you're trying them doesn't mean you have to make a career about it or be a professional or be a legend at it. That's us comparing ourselves. There's no reason why, if we have the tools, that we can't try to do something. I made an entire deck for myself, and I don't consider myself to be, I would never go out and say, I don't think of myself as a great artist. But I sometimes I do things. And again, my art teacher was someone, you know, when I was doing things that maybe weren't that awesome, she'd always just kind of go, well, you know, that's interesting. I like that color there. But other times I would do things and she'd be like, oh my God, like, don't change that. That is awesome. Like, keep it like that. That's perfect. That's what you want to do. And that's what you want. You want people to encourage, not to tell you what you can't do or, oh, you can't do this. Sure, you can do it. It's just, you know, will you necessarily do it like the professionals? I don't know. I mean, maybe. I mean, maybe not. I mean, I don't think anybody should I don't think people should start there. People shouldn't start at people like to start at the end. You know, remember you're at the beginning. Don't start at the end. Don't assume that, you know, I've picked this up. You know, I've started painting today and tomorrow I'm going to be Picasso. You know, some people, again, may have a natural talent and may gravitate to it. Other people, it may be more than something learned, but it doesn't mean that one is necessarily ultimately going to be better than the other. It's just, and it's not, and it doesn't matter. I mean, better according to whom? You know, it's just a matter of, again, having that structure. From what I see, you look brilliant. I'm so glad. Yeah. And so, yeah. So anyway, just some things I want to talk about. I mean, the school definitely did come into my mind because I'm obviously as the semester is getting to start, I want to encourage people. But we're going to try to have a live stream next week. I'm going to reach out to all the professors today. And even if I just end up having myself and one other professor, like, you know, if Max is available or if Joanna's available or somebody. Kate left me a message. She's one of the messages I have to look at. But I know she's like extremely overwhelmed right now. So I don't know who's going to do that. But yeah, I just want this to, the whole point of it is I want this to be an opportunity for people to create and to play. It's a school, but at the same time, you know, you're getting it with, you're getting the serious background, but then you're allowed to play with that. You know, it's different from going to university because you're allowed to play with it. Okay. And I think, yeah, it's a good thing we are talking about it because maybe that's the way I need to talk about it in marketing and so forth too, because I think a lot of people are thinking like, ooh, I'm, you know, it's above my head. And it's like, no, it's not. I mean, you take what you can get from it. So anyway, we're way over time. So thank you guys so much for joining me today. You know, like I said, I'll see you all tomorrow morning. And let's see, what is it, Friday? Yeah, today's a day actually when I've been writing my Azrael stuff up and I got to do some videos and stuff. So you're so kind. Thank you. I'm going to check with the guides. I feel like this is right where I'd like to be. Thanks, Brigid. Oh, you're welcome. Oh, and like I said, you know, hey, as I say, I only speak truth. I don't tell people things, you know. I'm not good at telling people things if I don't believe them. So yeah. So thank you for saying I'm being kind. But I also genuinely feel everybody here has that potential, and everybody is capable. So yeah. So that would be awesome. So yeah, I hope to see some more of you. That would be really awesome. Fun topic and a good reminder. Yeah. Exactly. We're all, you know, I think that's literally what I keep getting when I start getting down on myself about, oh, this is terrible. I'm not making money. I'm not doing this and that. And the spirits are like, just play. And you're sitting there going, what do you mean just play? I've got serious things to do. And they're like, just play, you know, because sometimes when you play, you figure out another way to do it. So as well. But again, there doesn't have to be any purpose at all. You know, I'll end it with Joseph Campbell. You know, what's the meaning of a flower? What's the meaning of a flea? It doesn't have a meaning, but it's there, and it's amazing that it's there, right? So anyway, all of you have a wonderful rest Friday, and some of you I'm going to see Sunday, and yeah, and we'll catch up. I will be here tomorrow morning too, so take care.